Now, with Paul Majors, Diana Pierce, Ken Barlow, and Randy Shaver, you're watching KARE 11 News at 10.
People are, by nature, drawn to stories. We love to hear them, and we love to tell them.
The main focuses of today's program are The Great Escape, Language and Communication, Fears and Phobias, Culture, Genetics, Chernobyl, and Area 51.
In the next 30 minutes, we will be hearing stories from all around the world, everything from cultural differences to conspiracy theories.
Nonfiction is informative, educational, and entertaining.
Keep going.
That's it!
Now, for another special feature, have you ever wondered where our language originated? Words performed in the brain or what separates our language from mimicking animals? Well, today we have two special guests, Dr. Stronglove and Professor Willard Buckham, to explain all of that and more. First, to the brain, we'll go to Dr. Love.
Thank you, John. One of the major things that separates us from animals is language, which can largely be attributed to our unique brains. According to U. Franklin, R. Rodman, and N. Higgins, our brains are composed of roughly 10 billion neurons and about 1 billion fibers that connect them. As we know, though, the brain is not just an unorganized pile of neurons and neural fibers. It has a form. The brain is formed by two cerebral hemispheres, a left and a right hemisphere. These two hemispheres are not completely isolated, though. They are joined by a bridge of neural fibers called the corpus callosum. Believe it or not, we actually did not know what we do now about the brain and language within it. According to U. Franklin, R. Rodman, and N. Higgins, the study and understanding of language in a modern sense began with Franz Joseph Gall in the 1800s with the theory of localization. His theory describes certain parts of the brain being in control of certain aspects of human life, such as eating, writing, talking, or creating. With this theory, he introduced phrenology, the designation of a person's traits by the bumps in their head. Although this practice was not correct, Gall was correct in his argument for modularity, the idea that the brain has certain areas for certain functions. Later in the century, another scientist named Paul Broca concluded that the language function of the brain was performed in the front area of the left hemisphere, aptly named the Broca area. He discovered this by studying brain damage coinciding with the loss of language functions. One main example of this is Phineas Gage, a railroad worker who had an iron rod driven through his head in an accident. After his injury, Gage's language function remained as it was before, but some of his other traits.
Traits.
Okay. Start again.
Just keep going because I can edit this stuff out.
Yeah.
After his injury, Gage's language function remained as it was before, but some of his other traits, such as memory, began to lack. This research showed that language is a localized function, meaning its use is centered in one hemisphere of the brain.
Which hemisphere, though? I just circled the hemispheres.
Thank you, Dr. Stronglove. Now to Professor Buckham, who will show the spread of language with his faithful assistant, Igor.
Yes, John. As we can see, language originated in modern-day Turkey at around 10,000 to 13,000 BCE. This language, called Proto-Indo-European, then moved to modern-day Greece at around 8,000 BCE. From there, nomadic peoples traveled north, bringing the language into Germany at around 6,000 BC. From there, nomadic peoples traveled north, bringing the language into Germany at around 6,000 BCE. After Germany, the language spread to Scandinavia by 5,500 BC.
Thank you for your time, doctors. That was very good. That wraps up this extremely intriguing subject. We'll see you next time for the studying of mental capacities of certain test subjects and teachers.
Para los programas infantiles, para los de variedades, para los juveniles, para los musicales, para los concursos, para los reality show, para los talk show, para los deportivos, para los humorísticos, para los informativos, para las telenovelas, para las teleseries, para los de entretenimiento, para los unitarios, para los educativos, para los distribuidores, para los productores, para los anunciantes, para los presidentes, para los ejecutivos, para los cable operadores, para la TV abierta, para la TV paga, para las películas y series, para los directores, para los que escriben, para las aperturas, para el actor principal, para la actriz principal, para los de reparto, para las promociones, para los jurados, para los que vinieron el año pasado, para los que se animaron a volver, para los que vinieron solos, para los que vinieron con alguien, para los que no vinieron, para los que llegaron últimos, para los que se van antes, para los que se quedan hasta el final, para los que se van a otro lado, para los nerviosos, para los que vienen a comer, para los que vienen a tomar, para los que no toman, para los que se toman todo, para los que están atrás, para los fans, para los que se maquillaron de más, para los que se pasaron con el sol, para los que vinieron por la playa, para los que no sabían qué ponerse, para los que entraron por la alfombra, para los que se tropiezan, para los que te quieren, para los que quieren que ganes, para los que quieren que pierdas, para los que te envidian poco, para los que te envidian mucho, para los que leen Produ, para los que no la leen, para los que tienen ideas, para los que se trabajan todo, para los que se comprometen, para los que se superan, para que no te olvides de esta noche, para el INTE, para todos.
The escape from prison camp Stalin 3, also known as the Great Escape. But only 3 prisoners of war made it out of all 280 that were sentenced. Stay tuned to find out this harrowing tale of skill, luck, and sheer determination. The Great Escape, coming right up.
So how did you escape from Stalag 3, the supposedly inescapable prison camp?
Well, it was a very easy task, there were a lot of us there, and, we just decided to dig a tunnel.
I wouldn't call it inescapable.
Yeah, it was very bad, but they really knew what they were doing, with the technology that they had.
They had seismographs and microphones to try and catch any tunneling that was going on down there, along with a bright yellow colored sand, which was different from the topsoil, and so you would be able to tell it's a guard if someone was tunneling because of the yellowish coloring on the ground.
You needed to get sand one way or another.
Who came up with this idea of escaping?
Roger Bushel. Yep, that's his name. He's actually escaped from many other prison camps, so, but he got this tunneling idea right away. We stumbled across a stove in bunk 104 where he was staying, and we pushed that aside, and we found some soft earth underneath it, and he just got the idea, well, let's start digging.
What materials did you guys use to dig this tunnel?
Oh, everything. Yeah, we had to use anything that was in the camp, we didn't have any outside materials. They stripped us down of all our weapons and tools, so we used stuff like tin milk cans, about 1,400 of those and 1,600 blankets, to muffle out the noise,
like
tables
chairs.
and stuff.
In your opinion, would you call this a great escape?
No, not with the death toll.
No, only us 3 got out, and there were supposed to be many, many more.
How many people actually were killed or captured?
50 killed, and 8 were
sent to a concentration camp.
And then
15 were just rounded up right away and put back in.
Yep, they just got to go right back to the camp. I'm sure they were just shut in the cooler again, like most escapees. And then those 50 who were killed right away on orders from Hitler were then cremated, and their ashes were scattered by the rest of the people in the prison camp. So as an incentive not to do it again.
What conflicts did you face while digging this tunnel?
Well, the sand, it was very difficult to work with, and we needed to put it somewhere, so we had these little pockets that ran across our pants, and we'd open them up and sand would spill out, or we'd stomp them in, with water, and we'd sing songs at night to drown out the sound, so we really knew what we were doing. These are the dimensions of the full tunnel. Here you can see Hunter running out to the first tunnel, and this is Tom. That's where Tom ended, the very first tunnel. And then here, Dick, is the second tunnel. And in between there were exchange places where you could stop and do work. And then way down at the other end of the football field is Harry. Right at the end.
I'm here today to talk about a growing religion called Islam. It is the second largest religion in the world next to Christianity. There are 5 basic acts in Islam called the 5 pillars, as said in the Quran, the Islamic holy book. The 5 pillars are praying 5 times a day, to practice almsgiving to the poor, fasting during the month of Ramadan, pilgrimage to Mecca or the Hajj, and to say there is only one God and Muhammad is his prophet, and the confession of faith. Sharia is the religious code and law of Islam, and addresses many topics such as prayer, sexual intercourse, fasting, and diet. Most countries practice purdah, separation of men and women. They have separate rooms within a household and curtains dividing them. If a woman's husband dies before her, he is the one who decides if she is allowed into heaven or not. To learn more about this fascinating religion, I sat down with an author who knows a lot about this topic.
How are you enjoying Minnesota so far?
It's been interesting. I'm used to a much more desert-like climate. It's compared to this frozen tundra place.
So tell me your reasons for coming here.
My home in Pakistan was destroyed by the Taliban after my husband had disclosed some sensitive information. He was killed in the blast. The only reason I'm here is because I was not home at the time.
How do you respond to people's discomfort or prejudice about your culture?
It makes me very upset because we are no different than anybody else. No different. We have different cultures, but that does not make us different people.
So tell me about the book you're writing.
I'm writing a little bit about my struggle to get here to America, from Pakistan to here, just how much it's different and how much my life has changed.
What do you enjoy most about living here?
I really enjoy how many opportunities I've gotten, and just in my job, in the workplace, and just in life, and all the things I've been a part of.
Hey, Ovi.
Hey, what's up?
What are you doing in the dark, man?
Nothing, just the late night filings.
Really? Late night filing? What are you, a Russian spy or something?
Yeah, right.
All right, I'll catch you later.
Yeah, see ya.
Пронесло.
Да, уж чуть не спалили.
And I would do anything for love. Oh, I would do anything for love. I would do anything for love. But I won't do that, or that, or this. No, not this! Definitely not this! It hurts, but I kinda like it!
Dr. Schrader, what is radiation sickness?
Radiation sickness is an illness caused by the absorption of higher doses of radioactive materials. The level of sickness is determined upon the amount of materials absorbed.
What type of symptoms do people experience from the radiation sickness?
There are many symptoms of radiation sickness. These vary dependent upon the amount of radiation absorbed by the patient, but many symptoms are the same. According to the Mayo Clinic, several of the symptoms of the beginning stage are nausea, vomiting, a lightheaded sensation, diarrhea, extreme fevers, and strong headaches.
Dr. Schrader, who are the most susceptible to the radiation sickness?
It's a good question. The most susceptible people to the radiation were the youngest children and the oldest people. Many of these people develop cancer of various sorts and or mutations. As stated by the World Health Organization, this was due to the absorption of radioactive iodine, which moved through the bloodstream and gathered in many different parts of the body, such as the lymph nodes, breasts, and testicles. Therefore, many victims would develop thyroid cancer, breast cancer, testicular cancer, and even leukemia from just the materials traveling through their bloodstream.
How many people could you give a rough estimate of, were killed by the explosion and or the radiation?
At the time of the explosion, there were somewhere around 115,000 to 135,000 Ukrainian citizens with only a 19.6 mile radius of the power plant. As stated by the World Nuclear Association, along with these citizens, nearly 700,000 liquidators, or Russian soldiers and laborers who worked on the cleanup project, were also affected by the meltdown. Although official documents state that the death toll and victims of acute radiation sickness is only about 4,000 people, as stated by Global Research. There have been additional research done, and nearly 985,000 people from the surrounding countries that have died from cancer or just suffered from acute radiation sickness had contracted the ailments somewhere past 1986.
What were the areas most affected by this explosion from Chernobyl?
Pretty much all vegetation, rivers, lakes, pretty much all the way down to the groundwater was affected by all the radiation. The plumes of radiation that went into the air were carried directly over what is called the red forest, which is a big forest in that area. And the radioactive particles also settled on a majority of the trees, and a bunch of them died. So that forest and pretty much all the water was affected by the radiation.
Is all of the fauna dead in this area now?
Surprisingly, no. Actually, there has been an overwhelming positive in the biodiversity and abundance of wildlife in the area. For example, we've seen elk, roe deer, wild boar, foxes, otters, and hares, all within the 10-kilometer exclusion zone.
What is responsible for this surplus, since radiation could not give these effects?
According to encyclopediaofearth.com, since humans have been evacuated, there's been a huge explosion of more healthy ecosystems in the area. At the time of Chernobyl explosion, about 40% of the area was used for agriculture. So the grass was mowed down by cattle and other livestock, and trees were cut down for firewood and construction and other things. Now that humans are gone, the grass is really long and the habitat is doing very well. However, we can't count this as a victory yet because we don't know what the effects of radiation long-term are going to be on the species living in the area.
Hi, I'm Ginger Jeans. We join you tonight with best-selling author Melinda Barkley with her best-selling book, What Can Genetics Do for You? Thank you for joining us this evening, Melinda. Of course. Oh, I know you've written some articles about genetics in the past. Do you care to explain the basics of genetics to our viewers who might not know as much?
Certainly, Ginger. Genetics are the building blocks of human existence. They tell you what hair color you have or what eye color you have. They make you you.
Tell us, what is your new book about exactly?
My book goes more in depth about genetic engineering.
Fascinating. Do you care to explain?
Well, sure. Genetic engineering is the reshuffling of genes, usually from one species to another. There's a set of techniques used to cut DNA, either in a specific place or in random places. Once isolated, one can study the different segments of DNA, multiply them, and stick them into another DNA of another cell or organism. Genetic engineering makes it possible to break through a species barrier and shuffle information between completely unrelated species. But of course, there are downfalls to this. We cannot tell what the new gene's role and behavior are in the organism it came from, or what it might do if we place it in a completely different species. We also know very little about what a gene might trigger or interrupt depending on where it gets placed into the new host. There are many questions that need to be answered before we can tell if genetic engineering really is a good idea.
That is some intriguing information. Tell us, where can interested viewers find more information?
For more information, you can check out my book, What Can Genetic Engineering Do for You?
Thank you for enlightening us this evening, Melinda.
Of course.
For our next topic, we will have a debate about the benefits and drawbacks of genetic engineering. Here to discuss this controversial subject is Charlotte Silver, salutations, and environmentalist Savannah Wadsworth.
Hello.
According to an article written by Rakesh S. Shadran, PhD, who is an IPM specialist, so he knows what he's talking about, some genetically engineered crops are capable of resisting pests and generating higher yields for farmers, while producing cheaper food with higher nutrients.
What you're suggesting would increase our dependence on pesticides. The article that you just cited from states that there are risks towards our ecosystem. The risks are called genetic pollution, which is when transgenes flow into organisms through pollution, which causes danger to our ecosystem. Once the genes are released, it's hard to recall them back. Some organisms have been a nuisance, although they're originally introduced as a biological control, like the Japanese ladybug.
Rakesh also noted that possible benefit of transgenic crops or animals is that they can be bred for desirable traits, unlike the Japanese ladybug, which does not contain desirable traits. And it is faster than when traditional breeding methods are used. Certain transgenic crops can also have higher nutrients and vitamins, which can help. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to cut you off, Ms. Silver. I've just been told that our viewers would like to hear more about genetic engineering in humans.
I'll go first. In an article that I found on gm.org sums up my belief about why genetic engineering, specifically inheritable genetic modification, is a bad idea. Inheritable modification refers to the technology of changing the genes that are passed on to the next generations of species. The genetic alterations would be made in sperm, egg, or early embryos. If people begin to use inheritable genetic modification, or IGM, this would make people more like objects. Parents could sculpt their children into perfect molds, which only well-off parents would be able to do, and then they'd get these upgrades. Kids would be smarter and more athletic.
Savannah, do you have anything to say about genetic engineering? Of course I do. What do you think? Well, okay, Savannah. This is my side of the story, and I got this from the same article that you did, off of gm.com. Inheritable genetic modification could prevent genetic diseases from being passed down from parents to their offspring. And this is a great technology that can help many people. This can prevent certain health issues, and it can also just help people in general. It's not all about creating your perfect, ideal child. It's helping people, okay? And this great technology, if people realize that it's out there, then they're going to start abusing it and going to black markets to get it. The government might as well make it legal while they can. So that's all I have to say. Well, it seems we have run out of time today. Thank you both for your insightful views. Back to you.
Wer privat oder beruflich auf sein Auto angewiesen ist, kann mit ein paar einfachen Verhaltensänderungen den hohen Preisen entgegensteuern. Bei Kurzstopps und längerem Ampelrot den Motor ausschalten. Überprüfen Sie regelmäßig den Reifendruck. Bleifuß Adi, niedrigtourig fahren. Gänge möglichst früh hochschalten. Überflüssiges Beschleunigen und Bremsen vermeiden. Auch das spart Sprit und schont die Nerven. Benutzen Sie für kurze Wege auch einmal das Fahrrad oder gehen Sie zu Fuß. Und bilden Sie auf dem Weg zur Arbeit doch öfters mal Fahrgemeinschaften.
Area 51 was formed in 1955 by the CIA to create and test top-secret military projects. The base was set up in the southern Nevada desert where it would, or so they had hoped, lay undiscovered far from public eyes.
No aliens ever visited Area 51, but there was a flying saucer. It
was initially designed in 1956 by the government for surveillance of other countries. This futuristic contraption was designed to take off and land vertically and to reach a height of 100,000 feet and top speeds of 2,600 miles per hour, crossing from New York to Miami in a mere 24 minutes. However, the creation of this aircraft was never really finished. One reason is that it would have cost $3,168,000, $26 million today, to continue. But more importantly, it couldn't even come close to flying at altitudes of 100,000 feet, reaching only 5 or 6 on a good day.
This sci-fi-like flying saucer wasn't Area 51's only major declassified project, though. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, the secret base commenced on a project known as Oxcart, the construction and testing of another advanced surveillance aircraft that went by the name of Archangel 12. The purpose of this Air 12 airplane was meant to be undetectable, was to fly over and gather information on the Soviet Union. This marvel of engineering could fly at over 2,000 miles per hour, crossing the United States in 70 minutes and take pictures the whole time. The Soviets, however, were just as suspicious as the Americans, sending a satellite around the world that would periodically cross over Area 51. In order to keep the Soviets from finding out what they were building, the workers at Area 51 would leave out cardboard planes in order to cast shadows when the satellites went by, effectively misleading the Soviets from finding out the true nature of their aircraft. But despite the A-12's brilliant design and all of Oxcart's team's efforts to keep it secret, it never saw much action for it was intended for. Just as it was being finished and made ready for operation, the U.S. Air Force SR-71 Blackbird had already stolen the glory. The A-12 was decommissioned in 1968 after only 1 year of service.
Even today, after all of the secrets of Area 51 have started to leak into society, this mysterious site still doesn't officially exist and will never appear on a public U.S. government map. And though we may know of a few of the projects the military has undertaken, so much of it still lays in shadow. Maybe we'll never know about everything that goes on there. Who knows, maybe we do even get visits from otherworldly beings. But if there is one thing we know for sure, no matter how much is released, and no matter how much is kept secret, Area 51 will always be in a fog of mystery and confusion.